Holding back the title of slop, fair use? Ask Claude. And Brian Erickson has an axe to grind. Welcome to the Unlimited Supply Podcast, your daily music business TLDR in your ear, powered by humans living in fragile equilibrium with AI, and brought to you by No Disc, helping music, technology, and finance companies navigate the music industry, and partnered with Digital Music News. I'm Lars Murray. It's June 30th, 2026. It's Tech Tuesday, and we're gonna geek right out. Straight into the AI, because when the rest of the world is on vacation, AI never sleeps. We devoted some coverage recently to Deezer's efforts to controlling AI slop using a sophisticated detection technology that removes slop from the system and acts as a protective shield for the market share of real artists. Removing the music is one way to deal with this issue. The other way is the one chosen by Tidal this week to hold back its title of AI slop. Tidal, which is owned by Block, formerly Square, the payment processing company, isn't playing whack-a-mole and removing AI slop. It's taking the simpler and more Block-appropriate tack. It's just not paying the AI slop creators, even if they aren't removing the slop itself. The theory is that simply not paying for AI slop will discourage its creation and distribution, which sounds reasonable, but despite all of the best intentions of Tidal in this case, as long as the other DSPs continue to allow and monetize the slop, distributors will still have an incentive to encourage it or, at best, turn a blind eye to it. After all, market share is market share. The other issue is that whether it's compensated or not, the sheer volume of slop clutters the environment and makes it harder for real artists to break through. Only removing it will solve that problem. So, while it's a step in the right direction, it's a bit of a surprising half measure coming from a company with such deep technical resources potentially available to it. Though, to be fair, Tony Gervino, the editor-in-chief of Tidal, acknowledges this, sort of, by leaving the policy open to amendment or change. Finally, until Spotify, Amazon, or Apple commit to removing slop at scale, the way Deezer has, it's not going to change much monetarily for artists. Tidal is just not big enough. Sarah Perez had the full rundown over at TechCrunch. If you're not Deezer, if you're not Tidal, if you lack the sophisticated detection capabilities available to streaming companies, there is still a way you can figure out what is real and what is AI. It's called using your noggin, and it's a little more labor-intensive than an AI bot, but armed with the right knowledge, anybody can figure out what's slop. Luckily, we have AI watchdog Virginie Berger to supply that knowledge. Over in a Forbes post, Virginie lays out 5 AI tells, which are sort of the music equivalent of how to figure out whether a shit poster on social media is a bot or not. Basically, if they emerged out of nowhere, chances are they are not some undiscovered prodigy toiling in anonymity in their basement. They are probably a bot. There are 4 other tells. I'm not going to spoil them. Go check out Virginie's article. There's a link in the show notes. Another thing Virginie points out is that a lot of AI music is not 100% AI. Her beef is not so much that AI music is a thing, as that the AI compensation schemes for meat space artists are still out of whack. Suno took another step last week toward positioning itself as a creative enhancement tool when it announced its new program to provide grants to independent musicians. Over at Music Business Worldwide, Murray Stassen's headline focused on the understandable non-disparagement clause in Suno's grant program contract. But the bigger picture is Suno putting real dollars into the hands of musicians, which is never a bad thing. What Suno gets out of it is a patina of artist support legitimacy, but perhaps more importantly, it creates case studies where independent musicians, its toughest critics, can theoretically be won over by using the platform to enhance their capabilities. I see what you did there, Paul Sinclair, and it looks very familiar. After all, that's what we were doing in an earlier era, back in 2015 at Pandora. And that's a good thing to do. I repeat, putting money into the pockets of independent musicians is never a bad thing. My advice to the independent musicians, get in there, take the grant while the getting is good. Unfortunately, as was also the case at Pandora, these programs usually don't last forever. Ultimately, when artist compensation gets sorted out, we will be back to duking it out for penny fractions. What are those penny fractions going to look like in the AI world? Well, Walter de Brouwer, the Stanford professor, has spent a lot of time thinking about this stuff, and he lays out a vision of the next 5 to 10 years in a guest editorial over at Music Business Worldwide. He's come up with a pretty simple term for dealing with artist compensation. He calls it a transformation royalty, a micropayment or penny fraction that would get paid every time an artist's music is referenced, which is pretty much at the heart of all of the AI training data lawsuits and controversy currently raging on. But he takes this a step further and suggests that listening is going to move toward hyper-personalized, bespoke, generative AI music, and that artists should be creating with that future in mind. Putting it in more familiar terms, he's sort of suggesting that creators turn out not just music, but essentially stem packs for AI, which anyone who uses Splice will understand. I'm not so sure that this hyper-personalized, bespoke streaming is going to conquer the world. After all, this kind of personalization is the opposite of the tribal behavior that defines success in music. But he could be right, and where I do agree with him is that a so-called transformation royalty should, and probably will, emerge after all of the current legal dust has literally settled. And in the That's Rich department, Music Business Worldwide is reporting that AI giant Anthropic, the parent company of Claude, which has hoovered up as much written and recorded material as it can to feed its training models, and is fighting multiple lawsuits over how it obtained that training material and what IP protections apply to it, while it tries to claim AI training is fair use. Yes, that very same AI giant Anthropic is suing Chinese everything giant Alibaba for copying Claude. I wonder if that falls under fair use. I think I'll ask Claude. Tune in tomorrow for the answer. And that's another Tech Tuesday. If you listened yesterday, you know it's CD Redemption Week. We have Axe Grinder segments from both of the hosts of the Great Albums podcast. Bill Lambusta yesterday, and today, Brian Erickson. If you haven't listened to the Great Albums podcast, I recommend it. Bill and Brian and a guest do deep dives on great albums from the fan perspective, though they are themselves musicians. They do it in a way that makes you want to dive right into the conversation yourself. The Great Albums has been on hiatus for a few years now, but they're back in business with a new episode covering Vampire Weekend. So if you're a Vampire Weekend fan, you'll undoubtedly enjoy it. And if you're not yet a Vampire Weekend fan, well, you're going to learn something. But Brian's not here to talk about Vampire Weekend. Nope. Brian is here to talk about our little friend, the silver disc, the CD. Take it away, Brian.
I'm Brian Erickson, and this is my axe to grind. CDs are better than vinyl. And here's why I think so. Vinyl records are heavy, they're expensive, they're bulky, and most importantly, they often don't sound consistently good. Anecdotally, put a record on and listen to it. As you get closer to the inner groove, you might notice a drop in sound quality. That's called inner groove distortion, which I would attempt to explain if we had a little more time, but you can look that up instead. It's not that hard to find. Vinyl records are also quite fragile. A hairline scratch could render a song entirely unplayable. Meanwhile, CDs, in addition to being lighter, cheaper, more portable, and easier to store, never suffer from any type of sound degradation. The very first CD ever commercially released was 52nd Street by Billy Joel. It happened in 1982. And as long as that CD was stored even decently, if you press play, Zanzibar, My Life, Big Shot, they're all going to sound exactly the same as they did 44 years ago, which is a remarkable achievement in my opinion. Now, I don't have a solution to this per se. The only thing I'd say is that as the nostalgia cycle starts getting away from boomer and Gen X cultural touchstones, we're seeing certain things come back. Baggy pants, guitar music, cassette tapes, and I would bet at some point, CDs. I have a little bit of a cheat code in on this too. My nephew is 17 years old. When he was 13, 14, really starting to get into music, he'd be asking for vinyl records. You know, we'd go to the store, he'd ask for them for Christmas. Now, all he wants is to go to the used CD store. And while I know that's just one person, you know, he's a pretty plugged in guy who seems to know what's what. And if that's true, as someone who grew up listening to CDs, I find that to be really exciting. I'm Brian Erickson, and that is my axe to grind.
Thank you, Brian Erickson. You can check out Brian's podcast with yesterday's axe grinder, Bill Lambusta. The podcast is called The Great Albums, and there's a link in the show notes. Support for Unlimited Supply is provided by you. Sign up for a year of support and get the limited edition Unlimited Supply Merit Badge trucker hat, which we manufactured in limited quantities by popular demand. If you're just dipping a toe in, you can also get yourself the Unlimited Supply Merit Badge, or literally buy me a cup of coffee. There's a link in the show notes. If you like what you hear, please hit that follow button wherever you get your pods, including now Substack, and drop us a rating and or a review on Apple Podcasts, YouTube, or Spotify, and tell a friend or three. Links are in the show notes, but you can also visit unlimitedsupplypod.com to sign up for our newsletter, to tell us what you think about the show, to suggest feature ideas, to feed us info, to feed us lunch, to call us out on our dubious assertions, and to tell us what we're missing out on. I'm Lars Murray, and remember, in this business, no conflict means no interest.